We were never the strongest species in the galaxy, not the fastest, not the most technologically advanced, and certainly not the most numerous. What we had was politeness, diplomacy, the ability to smile and nod when alien ambassadors explained why our colonies needed to be relocated or our resources shared. Humanity's first contact protocols emphasized peace at all costs. After all, what chance did we have against civilizations that had been traversing the stars since our ancestors were figuring out fire? The Arvani delegation arrived on Earth with their usual arrogance. I watched from the observation deck as Admiral Rivera shook their ambassador's hand, all 6 of them, maintaining that practiced diplomatic smile. I was just a junior communications officer, recording everything, analyzing their linguistic patterns. Nobody important. Nobody they'd notice. The settlement on Proxima Centauri B must be evacuated within 30 solar cycles, the Arvani ambassador announced, not even bothering to frame it as a request. The planet has been designated as a sanctuary for the endangered mycloth species. This was the 3rd human colony that demanded we abandon in as many years. Each time, we complied. Each time, mysterious mining operations appeared months later. Each time, we swallowed our pride and retreated further into our tiny corner of the galaxy. Perhaps we could discuss alternatives, Rivera suggested, voice steady despite the vein pulsing in her temple. Our colonists have established. There are no alternatives, the ambassador interrupted. But we are generous. You have 30 cycles, not the customary 15. That night, I couldn't sleep. I accessed classified transmissions I had no business seeing. Communications from Proxima Centauri B, from the other abandoned colonies. Records of mineral deposits that coincidentally matched exactly what the Arvani needed for their new warship class. Evidence that the endangered mycloth didn't actually exist. The next morning, during the final negotiation, I watched Rivera sign away another piece of humanity's future. Something inside me snapped. They're lying, I said, my voice cutting through the sterile silence of the chamber. All eyes turned to me, human ones wide with shock, Arvani ones narrowing with contempt. Lieutenant Wells, Rivera warned, stand down. But I couldn't. I pulled up the evidence on the main display. Mining operations, fabricated endangered species reports, orbital scans showing no mycloth presence whatsoever. They've been manipulating us from the beginning, I continued, my hands shaking but my voice growing stronger. And we've been saying please and thank you while they take everything. The Arvani ambassador hissed something in their native tongue that my translator refused to process. Then, with deliberate slowness, he reached into his ceremonial robes and withdrew a small device. This insolence confirms what we have long suspected, he said. Humans are too unpredictable to be permitted unrestricted expansion. He pressed the device. Outside, through the massive windows of the Earth Diplomatic Center, the sky turned red. That, he said with cold satisfaction, was your defense satellite network deactivating. Our fleet has been waiting beyond your sensor range. You have one final chance to demonstrate proper respect. Rivera looked at me, then at the evidence still displayed on screen, then back at the Arvani. For the first time in recorded diplomatic history, she didn't smile. Lieutenant Wells, she said quietly, send the message. I didn't know what message she meant until I saw her tap a sequence on her neural implant. A code appeared on my console, one I'd never seen before, but instantly recognized from my military history studies. The code name was enough. The room fell silent as I entered the command. My fingers trembled above the console. What was enough? In all my years at the diplomatic corps, I'd never heard of such a protocol. Wells now. Rivera's voice had changed. Gone was the practiced diplomatic tone, replaced by something I'd never heard from her before. Raw command. The voice of someone who had prepared for this moment for years. I pressed confirm. The message was sent. The Arvani ambassador's expression shifted from smug superiority to confusion as his own device began emitting a series of tones. He barked something to his aides in their clicking language. "What have you done?" he demanded of Rivera. She straightened her uniform and spoke with perfect clarity. "For 50 years, we've played by your rules. We've smiled while you've taken our worlds. We've nodded while you've threatened our people. We've been polite." She took a step toward him. "But humanity has never been defined by its politeness, Ambassador. That was just a mask we wore while we prepared." Outside, the red sky suddenly flashed bright blue. Then again, and again, the Arvani delegation rushed to the windows. "Impossible," one of them whispered. The defense satellites hadn't been deactivated. They'd been activated, but not the ones the Arvani knew about. Hidden within asteroid belts, disguised as mining equipment, and drifting in the seemingly empty space between stars, humanity's real defenses were waking up. Rivera nodded at me to bring up the tactical display. I did. And even I was shocked. Hundreds of signals, thousands, lighting up across the solar system and beyond. Ships appearing out of nowhere, stations powering up weapons systems that shouldn't exist. "Did you really think," Rivera said, her voice almost gentle now, "that a species that spent most of its history fighting itself wouldn't know how to prepare for an external threat? We've been building this response since your first ship entered our system." The ambassador's translator squawked as he barked orders into his communicator. The response came back garbled, panicked. "Your fleet is currently facing a choice, Ambassador," Rivera continued. "The choice we've faced at every negotiation. Comply or be destroyed." I finally understood. For decades, Earth's public face had been one of deference and cooperation. Meanwhile, a shadow effort, Project Enough, had been building in secret, not just weapons, but a completely hidden infrastructure, a parallel human expansion prepared for this exact moment. "The colonies you forced us to abandon." Rivera gestured to the display where several dots were now blinking near Proxima Centauri. "They never left. They just went underground. Every time you've pushed us, we've been getting ready to push back." The Arvani ambassador's skin had paled to an ashen gray. This is an act of war." Rivera's smile wasn't diplomatic anymore. It was primal. "No, Ambassador. This is an act of enough. You came to our home and threatened us. In our history, that's never ended well for the Threatener." One of the junior Arvani aides whispered urgently to the ambassador, showing him something on their device. His eyes widened further. "What your aide is telling you," Rivera said, "is that we've just activated Phase 2. Your homeworld's orbital defenses are currently being surrounded by ships that have been hiding in your system for years, just like you hid your fleet beyond our sensors." She leaned in close. "The difference is, we knew you were there." The ambassador's breathing had become labored. "If you attack our homeworld." "We won't," Rivera cut him off, "unless you force our hand. Unlike you, we actually prefer peace. Real peace, not submission disguised as diplomacy." A deafening alarm suddenly cut through the chamber as emergency lights began flashing. Rivera's neural implant pinged, and her expression hardened. "Admiral," one of our security officers called from the doorway. "The HFY Confederation is hailing all channels. They're saying the Arvani attacked their border outpost. They're mobilizing." The ambassador's face contorted with rage. "You informed the HFY. You're trying to start an interstellar war." Rivera's expression didn't change. "We didn't contact anyone. But it seems we weren't the only ones tired of Arvani expansion." My console lit up with urgent messages from across known space. Species we'd never even contacted were suddenly revealing hidden strengths, making demands, claiming territories. The galactic status quo was shattering in real time. And somewhere in that chaos, I realized the terrible truth. We hadn't just prepared for war. We'd lit the fuse for something much bigger. The next 48 hours passed in a blur. I barely slept as reports flooded in from across known space. The diplomatic center had transformed into an impromptu war room, with Rivera commandeering the entire East Wing. As her unofficial communications specialist, Or perhaps because I'd been the one to confirm the enough protocol. I found myself pulled into the inner circle. The HFY have pushed the Arvani back to the Helios boundary, I reported, skimming the latest tactical update. They're requesting permission to enter what was formerly considered neutral space. Rivera nodded, her eyes fixed on the massive holographic display, showing real-time movements across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Granted, the neutrality agreements were always a fiction anyway, just another way the Arvani controlled expansion. Commander Ortiz, who'd appeared from nowhere the moment the crisis began, frowned. "Admiral, are we certain the HFY can be trusted? Their history with humans has been complicated." "No one can be trusted," Rivera replied. "But their hatred for the Arvani is genuine. For now, that's enough." The door hissed open, and a haggard-looking woman in civilian clothes entered. Dr. Lakshmi Patel, the xenobiologist who'd spent 20 years studying Arvani physiology and psychology under the guise of cultural exchange. Another secret player in Project Enough. "The Arvani High Command has recalled their diplomats from all outposts," she announced. "They're consolidating their fleet around their 3 core worlds, classic defensive posture." "And the colonies they stole from us?" I asked. "Abandoned," Patel replied. "They're cutting losses, protecting what matters most to them." Rivera's lips curled into a thin smile. "Just as we predicted." That's when I finally understood. This wasn't just about standing up to bullies or reclaiming stolen territories. Project Enough had been designed to trigger a specific response, to create a particular type of power vacuum in the galaxy. "You wanted this," I said quietly, looking at Rivera. "You wanted the Arvani to retreat, to leave those worlds vulnerable." "Lieutenant Wells," Rivera said, "what happens when a predator species suddenly abandons its territory?" I didn't need to answer. The galaxy was about to enter a free-for-all, with dozens of species rushing to claim the suddenly available resources and strategic positions, and humanity, with its secret network of ships and bases, was perfectly positioned to move first. Deep in the abandoned Arvani mining complex on Proxima Centauri B, Captain Maya Okafor wiped grime from her face as she studied the subterranean settlement's defenses. For 3 years, her team had lived beneath the surface, maintaining the illusion that humans had evacuated the planet. 3 years of silence, of careful movement of recycled air and artificial light. "Status report," she demanded, taking a long pull from her water ration. Her second-in-command, engineering specialist Dmitri, emerged from the generator room. "Surface sensors confirm all Arvani ships have jumped out system. Their automated equipment is powering down. We're alone. And the settlement's core systems, ready for full reactivation. The colonists can begin returning to the surface within 12 hours. Maya nodded, feeling a weight lifting from her shoulders, the weight of responsibility for 800 civilians who'd volunteered to live underground rather than abandon their homes. The weight of knowing their discovery would have meant execution by the Arvani. "Send the all clear," she ordered. "And prepare the defense grid. Just because the Arvani left doesn't mean we won't have visitors." As if summoned by her words, the proximity alert sounded. Dmitri rushed to the sensor station. "Unknown vessel entering orbit," he reported, tension threading through his voice. "Configuration doesn't match any known Arvani design. I'm not sure what it is." Maya stared at the fuzzy image on the display. The ship was organic-looking, all curves and irregular protrusions. Nothing like the angular, metallic Arvani vessels. "Open emergency channel to Earth," she ordered. "We need identification on this." The message indicator flashed before she could finish. Someone was broadcasting from the unknown ship. "This is Settlement Proxima," Maya said, activating the comm. "Identify yourself." Static crackled, then cleared. "This is Emissary Valk of the Serethi Cooperative. We come seeking alliance against our mutual enemy." Maya exchanged glances with Dmitri. The Serethi. They were supposed to be extinct, wiped out by the Arvani centuries ago. At least, that's what the history files claimed. "Stand by, emissary," she replied, muting the channel. "Dimitri, get me everything we have on the Serathi." "Already on it," he said, fingers flying over the console. "Not much. Supposedly a highly advanced civilization from the galactic core, masters of biotechnology, disappeared about 300 years ago after a conflict with the early Arvani Empire. The implications were staggering. If the Serathi had survived in hiding, just as humans had been hiding their true capabilities. "Captain," one of her officers called from across the room. "We're getting similar reports from 6 other formerly Arvani-controlled systems. Unknown vessels appearing, claiming to be civilizations thought to be extinct or subjugated." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "The Arvani weren't just taking our worlds," she murmured. "They were preventing us from meeting anyone who might help us stand against them." Back at Earth Command, I watched as Rivera received the reports from Proxima Centauri and the other reclaimed colonies. Her expression remained impassive, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of the tactical table. "The Serathi were supposed to be dead," Commander Ortiz whispered. "If they've been hiding all this time, then we're not the only ones who learned to wear masks," Rivera finished. "Send word to all our hidden outposts. First contact protocols with all emerging species. We need to know who our potential allies are." Dr. Patel looked troubled. "Admiral, we've spent 50 years studying the Arvani. We know their weaknesses, their psychology. These new players are complete unknowns." "No," Rivera corrected her. "They're survivors, just like us. Species who learn to hide from the dominant predator." She turned to me. "Lieutenant Wells, prepare a direct message to this emissary Valk. I want to speak with them personally." As I moved to comply, a priority alert flashed across all screens. Commander Ortiz swore under his breath. "The Arvani homeworld," he said. "Something's happening there." The tactical display shifted, showing the Arvani home system. Their defense grid, one of the most formidable in known space, was activating. Not against external threats, but against something on the surface of their primary world. "Magnify," Rivera ordered. The image zoomed in, revealing massive structures rising from beneath the planet's crust. Structures that had clearly been there for centuries, hidden and waiting. "Those aren't Arvani designs," Dr. Patel whispered. Rivera's expression darkened. "No, those are Serathi bioships. They've been under the Arvani homeworld all this time." The realization hit me like a physical blow. We'd thought Project Enough was humanity's secret plan to reclaim what we'd lost. But we'd unwittingly triggered something much older, much deeper. A revenge centuries in the making. The Arvani ambassador, still under guard in the adjacent chamber, began laughing. A harsh, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. "You fools," he said when Rivera confronted him. "You think you were the first to be pushed past Politeness. The Serathi went silent 300 years ago because they were planning, waiting, using us to clear the board of other potential rivals." He fixed his alien eyes on Rivera. "Congratulations, Admiral. You've just helped awaken the true apex predators of the galaxy." The diplomatic center erupted into chaos. Rivera ordered an immediate evacuation to the underground command facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, a bunker built during the early days of Project Enough, designed to withstand attacks far beyond what the Arvani could deliver. As our transport shot across North America, I watched the global defense grid powering up. Blue lights crisscrossing the atmosphere, visible even in daylight. Humanity preparing for the unknown. "What do we know about the Serathi?" I asked Dr. Patel, who sat across from me, her dark eyes fixed on a data tablet. "Almost nothing concrete," she admitted. "Legends mostly. They were supposed to be masters of biological technology. They didn't build ships, they grew them. Entire ecosystems that functioned as spacecraft, weapons, even planetary defense systems." Commander Ortiz leaned forward. "If they've been hiding beneath the Arvani homeworld for centuries, what were they waiting for?" "The right moment," Rivera said, breaking her silence. "When the Arvani were vulnerable and distracted. when their forces were spread across multiple fronts. She looked at each of us in turn, a moment exactly like the one we created. The realization was chilling. Had we been manipulated? Was Project Enough, humanity's great act of defiance, actually part of someone else's longer game? The transport shuddered as we began our descent into Cheyenne Mountain. Below us, massive doors slid open, revealing the entrance to humanity's last resort command center. "We need to contact Captain Okafor," Rivera said as we disembarked. "If the Serathi reached out to Proxima Centauri first, there must be a reason." On Proxima Centauri B, Maya Okafor stood face to face with emissary Valk of the Serathi Cooperative. The alien was unsettling to look at, humanoid in basic shape, but with skin that seemed to ripple with subtle color changes, and eyes that contained concentric rings of different hues. It wore something that might have been armor or might have been part of its body. "Your people have suffered under Arvani oppression," Valk said, its voice melodic, but with undertones that made Maya's teeth ache slightly. "As did mine, centuries ago. We have watched you. Your resistance impressed us. You've been watching us." Maya kept her hand near her sidearm. 300 colonists had already emerged from the underground complex. If this went badly, they'd be exposed. "We've been watching everyone," Valk replied. "For centuries. Waiting for a species with both the capacity and the will to break the Arvani dominance. The humans of Earth proved to be that species. And now what? You expect us to just hand over these worlds to you instead?" Valk's skin rippled blue-green. Amusement, perhaps. "No, Captain Okafor. We come to offer partnership. The galaxy is restructuring. The power vacuum the Arvani leave behind will be filled, either through cooperation or conflict." A communication officer rushed up to Maya, whispering urgently in her ear. "Captain, we're receiving priority transmissions from Earth. Admiral Rivera wants to speak with you and the Serathi emissary. Immediately." Maya nodded, not taking her eyes off Valk. "Looks like my superiors want to talk terms directly." "Perfect," Valk said, its skin now pulsing with golden patterns. "I had hoped to speak with your leaders. There is much they need to understand about what is coming." In the command center beneath Cheyenne Mountain, we established a direct link to Proxima Centauri. The wall-sized display showed Captain Okafor standing beside the alien emissary. Rivera stepped forward, spine straight, face composed. "Emissary Valk, I am Admiral Rivera of Earth Command. I understand you seek alliance with humanity." The alien's strange, rippling appearance made my stomach turn, but its voice was almost hypnotic. "Admiral, your species has demonstrated exceptional potential. You hid your true capabilities from the Arvani for decades. You planned methodically. You struck when the moment was right. These are qualities the Serathi Cooperative values. And the bioships emerging on the Arvani homeworld?" Rivera asked bluntly. "Those are your people as well?" "Yes, the vanguard of our return. The Arvani believed they had exterminated us 3 centuries ago. Instead, we merged with their world, became part of it, watched and waited as they built their empire on our backs. Commander Ortiz cut in. You used us to trigger your revenge." Valk's skin flashed crimson briefly. "No, Commander. We recognized kindred spirits, survivors who refused to be erased. We simply synchronized our plans with yours." Dr. Patil moved closer to the screen. "What exactly do you want from humanity, emissary?" "To stand with us, Dr. Patil. The Arvani were merely one predatory empire among many. The Krelth Dominion, the Nexus Authority, the Vor Combine, all watch from the shadows now, assessing whether to strike while the Arvani fall." The names meant nothing to me, but Rivera and Ortiz exchanged dark looks. "Those empires are beyond the outer rim," Rivera said. "They've never approached Earth space, because the Arvani kept them away," Valk replied. "Not out of any concern for you, but to protect their own interests. That barrier is now gone." A terrible understanding began to dawn. The galaxy wasn't just experiencing a power vacuum. It was about to erupt into a massive, multi-fronted war unlike anything in recorded history. And humanity had just painted a target on itself by demonstrating both advanced technology and the willingness to use it. "We need time to consider," Rivera began, but a priority alert cut her off. Commander Ortiz checked his console, then looked up with alarm. Multiple unidentified fleets just appeared at the edge of our solar system. At least 3 distinct configurations, none matching known signatures. Valk's skin pulsed deep purple. Too late. They're already here. The Dominion, the Authority, and the Combine. They'd been waiting for this moment as well. On the auxiliary screens, I watched as strange ships, hundreds of them, began to spread out, establishing positions around our system's outer planets. Some were crystalline, refracting light like massive geometric jewels. Others were dark, absorbing all light that touched them. The third group seemed to phase in and out of visibility, as if they weren't fully present in our reality. "These forces have been at a stalemate for millennia," Valk explained, its voice now urgent. "The Arvani collapse has broken that balance. Now every power sees opportunity, and humanity, with its hidden strength suddenly revealed, appears as either a valuable ally or a threat to be eliminated immediately." Captain Okafor broke her silence. "So what the hell do we do now?" Rivera's expression hardened as she studied the tactical display. Earth's defensive grid was formidable, but against 3 unknown alien armadas? And what about our colonies, our hidden outposts scattered across dozens of systems? "We need to contact the Arvani," she said finally. The room fell silent. Even Valk seemed surprised, its skin momentarily patternless. "The Arvani?" I couldn't help asking. "They'd sooner destroy us than help us." "Perhaps," Rivera nodded. "But they understand these other powers. They've been keeping them at bay for centuries. And right now, they're as vulnerable as we are." "The enemy of my enemy," Ortiz murmured. "Precisely." Rivera turned back to the screen. "Emissary Valk, would the Sirathi Cooperative be willing to temporarily suspend their vengeance against the Arvani in the face of these greater threats?" Valk was silent for a long moment, its skin cycling through a cascade of colors. "The Cooperative will consider this, but you should know, Admiral, that the Arvani might prefer extinction to alliance with those they once oppressed." "Maybe," Rivera said grimly, "but we're about to find out." She turned to me. "Lieutenant Wells, I need you to deliver a message directly to the Arvani ambassador. Tell him the rules of the game have changed. Tell him survival now depends on cooperation." "The ambassador won't listen to me," I protested. "I'm the one who exposed their lies, who triggered all this." "Exactly," Rivera said. "That's why it has to be you. The Arvani respect strength and those who demonstrate it. You stood up in that room and changed the course of galactic history. If anyone can convince them to join us, it's you." As I absorbed this impossible task, the perimeter alarms began blaring. Commander Ortiz rushed to the defense console. "Multiple breaches in our outer system defenses," he reported, voice tight with tension. "The crystalline ships, the Krelth Dominion. They're cutting through our automated defenses like they're not even there." On another screen, Captain Okafor was receiving similar reports. "Something's happening on Proxima too. Energy signatures appearing throughout the system." Emissary Valk's skin had gone entirely black. "They're deploying fold gates, creating transit points for their main forces. You have hours, not days." Rivera's expression didn't change, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. Earth's hidden fleet was scattered. Our allies were uncertain. Our enemies were converging. And I was somehow supposed to convince our worst enemy to fight alongside us. "Go, Lieutenant," she ordered. "Everything depends on this." As I headed for the secure cells where the Arvani delegation was being held, the facility shook with the first impacts against Earth's outer defenses. Through viewport windows, I could see flashes in the sky above, the opening salvos of what might be humanity's final war. Or perhaps if I could somehow pull off this impossible diplomatic mission, the beginning of something none of us could have imagined. A galaxy where the oppressors and the oppressed stood together against an even greater threat. A galaxy where being pushed past politeness wasn't the end of the story, but merely the first chapter in something much larger. I took a deep breath and stepped into the ambassador's chamber. His alien eyes locked onto mine with pure hatred. "They're coming," I said simply. "All of them. And without each other, we're all dead." The ambassador's expression shifted slightly, the first hint of uncertainty I'd ever seen in an Arvani face. "Show me," he demanded. I never thought I'd see the day when humans and Arvani fought side by side. Yet there we were, 3 months later, standing together on the observation deck of the Harmony, a massive joint command vessel created by merging Arvani technology with Serathi bioengineering. The ambassador, now Supreme Commander Krelvor of the Allied Forces, stood beside Rivera, both of them watching tactical displays as our combined fleets engaged the Krelth Dominion near Saturn's rings. "The Nexus Authority has withdrawn from the Ta Ceti system," reported Captain Okafor, her hologram flickering above the command table. "The colony is secure. Minimal casualties." Rivera nodded. "And the Vor combine, still holding position beyond Pluto. They seem hesitant since we repelled their first attack." I could hardly believe how much had changed since that desperate moment in the ambassador's cell. I'd shown him the tactical data, the approaching fleets, the overwhelming odds. For a long moment, he'd said nothing. Then he'd looked at me with those alien eyes and asked a single question. "Why do you fight when you cannot win?" "Because the alternative is to die without fighting at all," I'd answered. Something had shifted in him then. Not friendship. We were far from that. But recognition. The next day, he'd contacted the Arvani High Command. 2 days later, the first joint defense protocols were established. A week after that, the Serathi brought their bioships into formation alongside ours. Now, looking at the tactical display, I could see dozens of green markers representing successful defenses, liberated colonies, secured systems. We hadn't just survived. We were pushing back. "Your Lieutenant Wells was correct," Krelvor said to Rivera, inclining his head slightly in my direction. "The alternative to fighting together was mutual extinction." "Never thought I'd see an Arvani admit a human was right about anything," Rivera replied, the ghost of a smile on her face. "These are unprecedented times." That was an understatement. The galaxy had completely transformed. Former enemies worked together, sharing technologies, strategies, resources. The Serathi brought their biological innovations, the Arvani their tactical experience, and humans our adaptability and determination. "We've received a transmission from the Vor Combine," I announced, checking my console. "They're requesting negotiation terms." Rivera and Krelvor exchanged glances. They sensed the shifting momentum. Krelvor said, "The Dominion is retreating. The Authority has withdrawn. The Combine does not wish to stand alone." "Should we accept?" I asked. Rivera considered this. "Forward the request to the Joint Council. This isn't just our decision anymore." That was perhaps the most profound change of all. The Joint Council, representatives from Earth, the Arvani core worlds, and the Serathi Cooperative, now made decisions affecting billions of lives across hundreds of star systems, not through conquest or coercion, but through hard-earned respect and necessity. It seems, Krelvor observed, that being pushed past politeness has led to something unexpected. A new balance, Rivera agreed, built on strength, but maintained through cooperation. I thought about how it all began, with a junior communications officer who couldn't stay silent in the face of injustice, how that small act of defiance had cascaded into galactic war, and then, improbably, into a new kind of peace. As the tactical display updated, showing more enemy ships retreating, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before this all began. Hope, not just for survival, but for a future where different species could build something together rather than taking from each other. The observation deck's massive windows showed Earth rotating below us, beautiful and blue, no longer standing alone against the darkness. Around our planet, ships of a dozen designs and origins maintained their defensive formations, former enemies now united as guardians. Lieutenant Wells, Rivera said, interrupting my thoughts. The Joint Council has approved your proposal. You'll be heading the new diplomatic court, establishing communication protocols with the systems beyond the rim. Me. I was stunned. I'm the one who started this war. Krelvor made the strange clicking sound that passed for Arveni laughter. Precisely why it should be you who helps build what comes after. You spoke truth when politeness failed. Perhaps now you can speak understanding when rage is cooled. I looked out at the stars, thinking of all the worlds I'd visit, all the species I'd encounter, some friends, some former enemies, many still unknown. I accept, I said finally. As Rivera and Krelvor returned to their strategic planning, I stayed at the window, watching the slow dance of Allied ships against the backdrop of space. We had been pushed past politeness, past rage, past war itself, into something none of us could have imagined. A future where standing together had become more powerful than standing over one another. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all.